Okay, 1.5. Let me see, that's multiplying real numbers, which is negative and positives. You do it just like multiplying regular numbers. Just like if it was the 5 and the 6, you still multiply the 5 and 6. If you have like negative 5 times 6. Okay, you still do the 5 times 6 normal, is 30. Now to figure out what your sign is, if you have one negative, they'll be negative. If you have two negatives, it's positive. That's how addition and multiplication are different. Okay? If you're adding two negatives in addition, it's like you have two bills. And it doesn't turn out to a positive number. It turns out into a bigger, you owe a lot more money. Okay? So if you're adding two negatives, you're adding two bills up, and you owe a lot of money. And the multiply and divide, you just see what the sign is right here. Let me get some visuals that might help you. Okay, we'll do a short review on adding and subtracting. Okay, let's say we have these right here. If we're adding these numbers right here, these will be our positives and those are our negatives right there. Okay, so you have 3 positives, 2 negatives. Okay, so if you cancel these out and cancel these out, you have positive 1. Because it's positive 1, negative 1 makes 0. So 0, 0. So you have positive 1. Okay, this is adding them. What if you had 3 negatives and 2 negatives? So you're not going to have a positive. You're going to have 5 negatives if you put them all together, right? 5 negatives total. Okay? So when you're adding them, think about them all being the same color. You're going to add all that color up. Okay? So what if we had 5 negatives, 2 positives? We're adding 5 negatives and 2 positives.
We're adding 5 negatives and 2
5 negatives and 2 positives. We have 2
Negative.
positives, 5
Positive.
negatives.
Positive 3.
Negative 3.
Negative 7.
Let's take the zeros here.
5 negative.
0, 0. Somebody said negative 3. You're right. So did Amanda. Okay? Let's do some more like this. Let's do, how about 5 positives, 2 negatives?
Positive 3.
Positive 3, right. Put the zeros right there. It's positive 3. You see why you subtract when they're different signs? Because you end up subtracting the same amount of what the little one is. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of the adding and subtracting on negatives. Okay, let's see multiply and divide. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Let's say we have a negative 2 and we multiply it by negative 1. When you multiply it by negative, it flips it over. Okay?
Positive 1 or positive 2?
It flips it over, positive 2. So if there's a negative in one of them, it changes the sign. See, there's a negative here. If there's another negative, it changes the sign. Let's say we had a 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. We're multiplying it by negative 2. Okay, first,
Negative 6.
right, negative 6. First, we can double it, and then we can flip it over, which changes it to -6. So if there's one negative, it'll be negative. When there was two negatives, it was a positive. Okay? So 1.5, all you gotta do is normal multiplying, but to figure out what your sign is, if you've got one negative, then there'll be a negative. If you got two negatives, there'll be a positive. Okay, there's some of these where there's 3 or 4 things multiplied. What if you had ended up with 3 negatives in there?
Negative.
It'd be back to negative. So if there's an odd amount of negatives, it'll be a negative. Even if there's like a bunch of positives on here, all you count is the negative numbers, okay? For this rule, all you gotta do is count how many negatives. You could have 20 positives and 3 negatives, and you're just gonna count the 3 negatives, okay? Yeah, so if there's an even amount, it'll be positive. Just think of it as like kind of grouping them together. 2 of them makes it positive. There's an extra one there, makes it negative. See, there's an odd one. So if you have the numbers, let's do more than just one. Let's say we have 3 or 4 numbers multiplied. Let's start with just 3 numbers. Like number 41. There's a -3 times -4 times -5. How many negatives are there?
3.
There's 3 negatives is odd, so the answer
-16
is negative. Okay, now these you can do in any order because it's all multiplied. If it was multiply and divide and add mix, you'd have to use order of operations. But if they're all multiplied, you can do it in any order. So you could do 12 times 5, or you could do 20 times 3. 20 times 3 is easier to do in your head. 20 times 3 is 60, right? Okay, how about number 47? This one you aren't going to be able to do the whole thing in your head, but you get the sign in your head. What's the sign of this one?
Negative. Positive.
There's 2 negatives.
Positive, sorry.
Positive. Okay, and then you would do like 7 times 21, 147, and then do that times 13.
1911.
Huh?
1911.
Did you do it on the calculator or did you do it,
I wrote it down.
you did it on paper? Cool. Okay? We could have also done 13 times 7 and then multiply it by 21. If it's all multiplied, you can do it in any order. Okay, there's also fractions. Let's do a short reminder on how to do fractions. -8/3 times 9/4. When you're multiplying, do you need a common denominator? No. That's just for add and subtract. For multiply, you just multiply straight across.
To reduce
Or-
that, no.
Right. You could have multiplied straight across and got 72 over 12, but that's harder to reduce. What could we divide on the top and bottom?
3 and 9.
The 3 and 9, we could divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3,
And the 8 and 4.
and divide by 4. Divide by 4, divide by 4. Okay, something we need to make sure and do before we do all this stuff, see what your answer is going to be. Is it going to be positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative.
One negative, so it's going to be negative.
-6.
Try to do that first. Put it over there so you don't forget it.
Do you always want us to take it down to the lowest one?
Yeah. If you'd gotten 72 over 12, you would have only got like half right. If it's not reduced, you're going to get part of it counted off. So when you're grading it, if you forgot to reduce it, just count half. Okay, so 2 times 3, 6 over 1, that's just 6, right? 6 over 1 is the same as just 6. Don't forget to carry your sign into your answer. Okay, what about, let's do one that has a string of them. You aren't going to have to do very many. You're going to have to do maybe 3 at a time. I'm going to go ahead and do one that has 4 of them though. Like number 58 has 4/5 times negative 2/3 times negative 15 over 7 times 1/12. What's the sign of your answer?
Positive.
Right. Okay, before we do any multiplying, we sure do, it would be better to cancel some, wouldn't it? What can we divide here?
3 and 15.
3 and 15, divide by 3. And
So 5 and
5 and 5, divide by 5, divide by 5.
5. 4 and 2.
Or 2 and 2, either one of those. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Okay, 7 won't divide on top, will it? Okay, so 2 times 2, 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 1 times 7 is 7. Okay? So it looks really hard, but if you do all your canceling, it's really not all that hard. Okay, there is a couple of them that you'll probably have trouble on if I don't show you. 67 and 68, you need 4 answers. Because it has 2 things that it wants you to put 2 different numbers into. It has 2 expressions that you're supposed to put 2 numbers into. Let me show you. We'll do one that's kind of like them. They both say to evaluate, okay, negative x squared and negative x squared like this with 2 different x's. Okay, so let's do it when x equals, let's say 3 and a negative 3. Okay, we're going to do both of those numbers into both of these. And you may do it in a different order than what the answers are in the book, as long as you get those 4 answers, okay? Let's do this one first. The negative x squared. Let's do it with this one. When x equals 3. Okay, so where the x is, we'll put a 3. So we have negative 3 squared, which is negative 3 times negative 3. What's the answer to that? 9. 9. Okay. Let's do this other one with x equal to 3. Okay. Negative, and then where the x is, we'll put a 3. Okay, now what is different about that? Can you see what might be different?
That answer would be negative 9.
This answer would be a negative 9 because there's no parentheses around the negative part. So the only part that's squared is the 3. Okay? You only square the 3, not the negative part. So this one is negative 9. Okay? So let's do it now with the negative 3 replaced in these. The negative x squared these with the -3 now. Okay, this one, where the X is, we're putting in -3. Okay, this still squares the whole thing. First, if you do inside here, that turns into a positive. So you have a 3 that ends up being squared. So this is a +9. This one, leave the negative out, replace the X with the -3. We're using the -3 now. Okay, this is the only part being squared, the X part. So you still leave your negative out here. You're squaring the -3. So you have 3 negatives. Answer's negative, right? So whether you put a positive or negative in, this one came out negative, either way. And whether you put a positive or negative in here, when you squared it, it ended up coming out positive. So you have 2 problems like that. Okay, let's do one. You have to do number 72. We'll do number 71. It's going to be like 72. Evaluate 5x squared when x is 2 and when x is -2. So you have 2 different answers. Okay, the first one, we'll do the +2. That means this, it's only squaring the 2 and not the 5 in front. So you still have the 5 and the 2 is being squared. So you have 5 times 2 is 10 times 2 is 20. Okay, now let's do it for the -2. 5x squared. The x is going to be -2 this time. Okay, still leave the 5 out there by itself, and you're squaring the -2. Okay, this will be negative and negative. 2 negatives will be a positive, right? So you still have a positive answer. And it's still 5 times 2 is 10 times 2 is 20. Or 4 times 5 is 20. So both answers are 20. So in your answer column, just write 20, 20. Well, actually, you won't have that answer, but when you do 72, you'll have probably 2 of the same answer. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, you have to do number 75, it's a weight loss thing. We'll do number 76, it's like 75. 76 says Emma lost $3 each day for a period of 5 days in the value of a stock she owned. Express her total loss as an integer. That means as a positive, negative number. Okay, she lost $3 each day. That would be like -3. She lost $3 each day for a period of 5 days. So 5 times she lost 3. So what would that be?
-15.
-15. So she lost a total of 15. This is expressing it as an integer. Okay, you do have LCM and product factorization in the skills maintenance to make sure you don't forget it. You want to do at least common multiple just for a little memory. Your LCM is 36 and 60. Does anybody want to do it? No? No? Okay. If you don't want to review it, we won't review it. Prime factorization, make sure you remember prime factorization. You can write that with exponents if you want. Okay? But if nobody wants to do it, then we're good with it. If anybody has questions on it, you can call. Okay, we'll go to 1.6. Dividing fractions. Okay, when you're dividing fractions, all I want you to do is leave the first part of it exactly like it is and flip the second part over. You never flip the first part. Now I'll show you what let's write it down here. If you have 2/3 divided by 5/7, leave the first part. You never flip it over there. You leave it just like it is. This is the only part that changes. The dividing turns into multiplying by the reciprocal. What's a reciprocal?
Flip it over.
Flipping it over. Okay, so we put the 7 on top, 5 on bottom. Is there anything we can cancel? No? So just do regular multiplication. 2 times 7, and then 3 times 5. And that's as far as you go as long as the top's not bigger. Okay? So that's how you divide fractions. Now if you have negative and positives, it's the same as multiplication. If you have an odd amount, it's negative, and even amount is positive. So if these had both been negative numbers, you would have still had a positive. Right? If you would have had negative 2/3 divided by 5/7, you'd have had the negative. This still would have been exactly the same, times 7/5. The only thing that would have changed is your answer would be negative. Negative 14/15. Okay. What is the reciprocal of a whole number? What if you're dividing by
1/100.
right? If we have negative 300, let's make that over, let's see something I won't divide by 7. Divided by negative 16. Okay, this part, leave it like it is. And flip this one over. This was over 1, so what is it again?
Negative 1/16.
1/16, keep the sign with it. Okay, negative divide times the negative? Positive. Your answer is positive. Will 16 go into 300 evenly? I know 4 will divide into them because 4 goes into 100. Let's divide by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 300 divided by 4? 75? Okay. 75 and 4, they won't divide by anything. 75 divided by 25, 5, 3, and 4 won't. So that's as far as you can go on the canceling. Okay, 75 times 1 is 75. 7 times 4? 28. Okay. That you could leave like this, but it's better to get in the habit of going ahead and changing it into a mixed number. The answers in the book, they leave them improper, which this is called improper. Top is bigger. Okay, it's better if you go ahead and divide it. 75 divided by 28, sorry. 75 divided by 28, how many times will that go? 2 times 8, 16, 4, 5. And subtract that, you need to borrow. 15 minus 6 is 9, 6 minus 5 is 1. Okay, the 19, the remainder part, don't write it as a remainder. We're working with fractions. Put the 19 on top and then 28 on bottom. Okay, so write it like this to get in the habit of doing it. If you do it like this, you don't have to count it wrong, but you need to go ahead and get in the habit of doing this, because there's a lot of teachers that you're going to end up having later that will count this wrong. Okay? In fact, even later in this course, you'll have to have it reduced, simplified all the way. Okay? So go ahead and start getting in the habit of doing this. Look to see if it's improper or not. Okay, what's the reciprocal of this number?
47 over negative 13.
Okay, just leave the negative in front and flip it over. How about, what is a number if you have 0 over negative 5? Just, what is that equal to?
0.
This is equal to 0? Okay, how about negative 5 over 0? Undefined, not defined. In this book, they say not defined. There's some books that say undefined. Some books may have this thing, but there's some teachers that really don't care for this. It's just called the empty set. But this is what you need to write in here, not defined. Okay, dividing. Okay, turning a division into multiplication. Okay, we've already done some of that. If you have 4 divided by 17, how would you change that into multiplication?
4 times 17 over 1.
Right. You leave the 4, and then make the reciprocal of that. Multiply it by the reciprocal. 4 times 1 over 17. There are some of the problems that says to rewrite them. You don't actually even have to multiply it out. If it says to rewrite it as multiplication, that's as far as you have to go. You don't actually get the answer 4 over 17, okay? It wants the problem written as multiplication. So on numbers 37, 38, 39, this is what you have to do. Just rewrite it. Okay, what if you have a number like negative 13 over 47? How would you rewrite that as a multiplication? This means you're dividing 13 by 47. This means this is the same as saying 13 divided by 47, and one of them will be negative. If the negative is out in the front, it could be either one. So to rewrite this one,
So it'd be negative 13 times 147.
yeah, the answer actually gives 2 ways, or you put the negative with this part. Okay? Either way. So it looked like an answer, but it wants you to rewrite it as a multiplication. So that's what you do with 39. You have to flip the second part over. Okay, there's some more 49, 50. Those are just regular division problems. Change them to multiplication. Like number 51 says negative 5/4 divided by negative 3/4. Leave the first part. Change that to multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, if you multiply right away before you do any canceling, don't forget to divide later. If you get 20 over 12, don't forget to reduce it. What can you divide before you multiply here? 4. You divide by 4 first, then you won't have to reduce later. It's 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 3 is 3. What did I forget to do first?
Decide if it was positive or negative.
Right. You pick whether it's positive or negative. Is this going to be a positive or is it going to be negative? This would be positive. It wouldn't have mattered this time, but try to always check. Negative times negative is going to be positive, right? Okay, 5/3. What else we want to do with that?
Make it 1 2/3.
Right. 1 2/3. And you don't have to put the positive sign if it's
Do
positive.
we have to cancel?
You don't have to cancel. You can just do 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 3 is 12. And then you could reduce it from there. If you divide by 2, it's 10 over 6. Divide by 2 again. You finally get the 5/3.
Or just do my 12 and make
Yeah, you could just do it this way and then reduce if you want. Some numbers get so big, like the one I showed you that was like 3 things multiplied, 4 things multiplied. One like this, you wouldn't want to do all that multiplication.
I have a
Like-
question for you. When it's like that form, can we just pick, like, say that the first 5 goes into the second? I mean, can we just, anything on the bottom that goes to anything on the
On
top?
this
you can
one,
cancel
yeah,
it?
you didn't have to do this 3 and 15 first. You could have did this 5 and 15.
So you can do anything on the bottom that goes into anything on the top?
Right,
Anything that
anything
you
on
can.
bottom, anything on top.
No matter
You just
where it's
can't do a bottom and a bottom. Like you can't do a top and a top.
Right,
You can't divide 2 things on top. It has to be a top and a bottom.
okay.
But anything, yes. Okay. How about percent? Somebody said there was a percent increase or decrease?
74.
74 and 76. Okay, we'll do one that's not the one you have to do. Okay, let's do the athletic trainer. He had, the athletic trainer has, the number of jobs in 2006, 2006 was 17. In 2016, he had 21. So the change was 4. And it wants you to figure out the percent of increase. Okay. What you need to do percentages is, for the percent of increase, you need to do the change over the original number. Equals percent over 100. The change is 4. You could have got that just by subtracting them. They didn't have to give it to you. The change is 4. Your original number would be the first number. Which one's the earliest? The first number.
17.
The 17. Equals percent over 100. And how do you solve a proportion like this?
Multiply 4 times 100 divided by.
Right, multiply those two. What do you do with the 17? Divide by it. You multiply those, divide by 17. So you have 400 divided by 17. So let's divide that. It's probably not going to come out exactly equal, but if it's a decimal, it wants you to take it to the nearest tenth. Okay? So take it to 2 points after the decimal if it goes, and then round it. Okay, first 17 into 40, 2 times. 2 times 7, 14. So that's 34. 40 minus 34, 6. Bring our 0 down. So 3.
Yes.
3 times 7 is 21. 3, 4, 5. Okay, you have 9 left over. 17 into 90. 5. 5 times 7 is 35. 5, 6, 7, 8. Bring our Next zero down. 17 into 50. 3 is a little bit too much. So 2. We don't even need to finish doing this. We know this is a 2. So it's going to round to, because of this being a 2, it won't go up, to 23.5%. That's your percent of increase. It increased. You do the same for a percent of decrease. You still do the change of the original. If it had went from 17 down to 13, it would still be the same percent. It still would have changed by 4. Okay, so y'all can do those, you think? This one is a percent of increase. So it's positive. Percent of decrease on your fisherman, it went down. See the fisherman, the change it said was a -6, so that number's going to be negative. If we do the file clerk, the one above the athletic trainer, the file clerk had 234 is his 2006 number. 137 is his 2016. It changed by -97. Okay, the percent of decrease there, you did the change over the original equals percent over 100. So when you multiplied that, it was a negative 9,700 divided by 234, so that came out to a negative change. That one's actually on the chart. It tells you it's a negative 41.5%. Okay? So that's how you're going to do number 76. On 77 and 78, you need to remember your order of operations. Remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Make sure you do the multiply and divide from left to right. Don't do multiplies before divides, okay? A lot of people mess up on that. Make sure your add and subtracts are from left to right. And the exponents, you don't have any square roots. If there were square roots, this would be for exponents and square roots. I think that's about it. How about, could you do a fraction as a percent, or would you like to review that? You want to remember, you want quickly?
Yeah.
How about 3/4? Change this to decimal. 3 divided by 4 is 0.75, right? Because this is 30 divided by 20, subtract 28 is 2, 4 into that. Okay, that's 0.75. Changing this to a percentage, you have to move it 2 times. So you need to convert it to decimal and then make it a percent.
How come we don't change our ones up there? We don't go 2 times over, change it to 2%. Because there's already a percent.
This one? When we
Yes.
divided it, it did turn it to a percent.
Oh, right.
This over this, when you did that divided by that, it changed it to a percent.
Okay, so we did change it.
Yeah. Actually, it made it a percent because that's how you do this already. If you had just done 4 divided by 17, it would have been 0.235,
And then you'd have to
and then
go
you
over.
would have moved it over.
So you can do it.
You can, yeah. You could just do the change divided by the original. Multiply it by 100, just start moves your decimal already for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you could do that. Okay, that's all for today. Go ahead and start on your homework. Call a friend, call a teacher, do a shout out if you need help.